Welcome to Conversations Different, the podcast from the Santa Fe New Mexican about the interesting people, places, and issues of northern New Mexico. This is Inez Russell Gomez. Today we are speaking to Santa Fe's own Rocky Durham, who is visiting from Ukraine where he and his wife, Emmy, work and live. Welcome, Rocky. How does it feel to be back?
It's very strange. I have to say that I've only been back for a matter of hours after an arduous, almost 4-day journey back from Ukraine. And I'm here for 5 days, but it feels so good to be back in Santa Fe. I've already had some green chili.
Okay, I was going to ask it. Did you have green chili?
Yes, and there'll be more. There's more on the horizon for sure.
Yeah, I know. Even just traveling to Oregon, the first thing I do when I come back is get a green chili cheeseburger.
It's the New Mexican's burden.
Yes, it is. When I used to live in Florida, my folks would pick me up at the airport, and we used to stop at the Blake's by the Albuquerque Sunport.
There's no shame in that.
No, it's like you need it, you know. And I know they probably don't grow chili in Ukraine. That's the wheat place, right?
Well, yes, it is the wheat place. It is the breadbasket of Europe, and wheat is one of the main cultivars. However, they do grow chilies. And my wife and I found this farmer who is growing not only spicy, delicious chilies, but they actually have some seed stock from New Mexican chilies.
Oh,
and
wow.
he said that this harvest, which will be August time, he will set some aside for us. And he also grows corn. They grow a lot of corn in Ukraine. He grows corn and he nixtamalizes it. So this is the process of adding
You can make pozole.
I can make pozole and tortillas.
Oh.
So we have to wait until it's seasonally appropriate, which is one of the beautiful and difficult things to navigate as far as food in Ukraine is concerned. But
so you actually eat by the season. There's not going to be a freezer cart with just frozen green chili every day.
And the way we eat there, I don't want to get too off topic. I don't know where we're going, but there's so much Ukrainian food that is produced in Ukraine. In fact, unless it's citrus fruit or an avocado, everything we eat is produced locally, and it's one of the keys to their successes.
Wow, that's actually how you stay resilient. Is if you can produce your own food and you don't have to worry about supply chains breaking up.
Absolutely correct. Feeding your population and being able to sustain the supply chains to feed your populace is key.
And considering all that's been going on, that must be practically a miracle. But let's go back to how you got to Ukraine, because you had a career as a chef in Santa Fe. You're very well known. You come from a family, everybody knows your mom.
Yes, correct.
That is true. Linda Durham, great gallery, great art.
Love you, Mom.
Yeah. Oh. And yet you're in Ukraine.
Right.
So what happened?
Right. So this is I'll give you kind of the Reader's Digest version of this. My wife and I are both Russian linguists. And this happened independently of each other. About 24 or so years ago, I lived in St. Petersburg, and I was actually running a group of restaurants in London at the time, and called Santa Fe. Thank you very much. And I was just fascinated by what was happening in the Balkans, actually, and I wanted to start learning Serbo-Croatian. But a person that I knew from Croatia said, if you're going to learn a Slavic language, learn Russian first, and then learn the smaller languages. It just makes more sense.
Because you'd understand it, and then
exactly.
You could go,
and and people living in former Soviet republics are going to speak Russian anyhow, even if it is reluctantly.
Right.
So I started studying Russian, and it took me to Russia. When I came back to Santa Fe after that, I was introduced to my future wife. We were just friends who had learned to speak Russian in the U.S. military. So she was a Russian linguist who was trained to intercept transmissions. I love you, Emmy, my partner, and my other half.
Your pictures on Facebook are really cute.
Oh, thank you very much. So anyhow, we met. Our lives went different directions. We got back together in early 2020 or mid 2021. We got married in January 2022, and we were already looking for a different project. She was working for the Department of Health. I was a chef at a restaurant, as usual.
But you wanted to do something.
We wanted to do something that seemed more impactful.
Okay.
We were having does it matter feeding the wealthy and famous, or what can we do with our time? Our time is short.
Yes.
Maybe it was a midlife crisis that I was experiencing.
Early midlife crisis, because you're young.
Anyhow, so February 24th, 2022, the full-scale invasion took place.
And that's Russia deciding that it wants Ukraine because it's little Russia, little sister. They want it back.
Right. Even though this is a sovereign nation.
Right.
And you
can't expand your country by invasion. That's like a modern precept that we've all accepted.
This is occupational or terrorism from an occupying force. Anyhow, this happened. We knew right away this is where we had to be. We arrived on the border of Poland and Ukraine April the 9th, 2022.
Wow. So the battle was raging. It was still, it was crazy.
It was still, and it is today.
It hasn't gone away.
Just because the news doesn't reflect the horror show that it is in Ukraine. Yeah. The war's there every day.
And I imagine there's not a safe part of Ukraine, but you're in one of the least safe parts, if I understand how the battle's working.
Right. So the eastern part, Ukraine is huge, first of all. So it's about 1,000 miles from the Russian border. Then you have to cross the occupied territories from the eastern border and then the occupied territories. To cross over to the Polish border is about 1,000 miles. So imagine driving from Santa Fe to Los Angeles. That's Ukraine.
Okay.
It's big for European countries. It's huge. And then it's vertically massive as well. Anyway, in the east is the front line. The front line is also 1,000 miles long because it curves from like Belarus in the north all the way along the Russian border down to Odessa in the south and along the Dnipro River. And that's the front is massive and it's there every day. It's trench warfare. It's modern warfare with drones. It is horrifying. But there you can get hit with shorter range weapons like artillery and mortars and what have you, smaller drones. Where we live in the West, they have to expend the high dollar, like the ballistic missiles and the long range drones, to us. So we have air defense systems. We do get hit. There is nowhere in Ukraine that is safe per se, but it's definitely safer in the West than it is in the East. Once again, folks, I've traveled for 4 days and I've just arrived here.
Oh, my
I'm a little bit jet lagged.
We are so fortunate that you had time to talk to us. So basically, what do you do there now? So you're getting medical supplies?
Right. So I get asked a lot, being a chef and having the culinary background, people might imagine that I'm running some kind of a soup kitchen or working with World Central Kitchen. That is not the case. I had thought that that's what I was going to do when I went over there, just some way to harness my existing skill set. But as a chef, I'll tell you one of the things, and I hope there's some other chefs listening to this and nodding along with me, because what we do is logistics. It's not just cooking. It's making sure that we have the right personnel, the right equipment, the right information, the right supplies, the right amount of time that we know. And what the chef does is weaves these all together to turn it into a smooth service.
Right.
So that people get the right thing at the right time, at the right table. That's what I do in Ukraine, but it's not high dollar food. It's medical supplies for severe trauma. So we deal in materials that stop massive hemorrhaging and open airways to keep people alive so they can get to a stabilization point where they can have a little bit higher level medical care before being evacuated to hospitals, generally in Dnipro or Zaporizhia or Kharkiv or Kherson.
Wow. So that's a big responsibility. That's just huge.
It's I don't know how to explain it. To say that I love what I do discredits the horror that exists. So I want to make sure that throughout this conversation that people understand, although that I feel this great love for Ukraine and her people, and I love the food, and I can I say that I enjoy my time there? Has nothing to do with the horrors of war that exists there absolutely daily. And people are dying, kids are dying, people are being abducted, there's 40,000 abducted children that have been stolen by the terrorist occupiers, i.e. Russia, the war criminal Putin. But I love it. I've met the finest people who are there, who have felt this calling to be there. They've come from all walks of life, all political persuasions, countries across the world to help. And to be associated with this community of great human beings is just the most humbling experience I've ever had. Oh. And if we helped one person, it would have been worth it. And I would like to think that we've helped more than one.
Yeah, it seems like, considering you're getting medical supplies out to critical needs, that you would have.
And for 3 years, it'll be 3 years April 9th that we've been there.
We'll take a quick break and be right back.
Are you dreaming of a home of your own in Santa Fe, but feel like your finances aren't where they need to be? HomeWise is here to help. We offer free financial coaching and classes in English and Spanish that will help you proactively manage your money and get you qualified for the best mortgage loan possible. Contact us today to register for an in-person or online class, or to speak with a home purchase advisor who you can work with one-on-one to help you increase your savings, reduce your debt, and improve your credit score. Call 505-983-9473 or visit us at homewise.org. Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 188231.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to Rocky Durham about Ukraine and his experience there. It must be weird right now to be an American and to see a peace talk supposedly going on in Saudi Arabia, that Ukraine isn't at the table when it's their country that was invaded.
It's not a peace talk. It's a back channel business deal. Not including Ukraine in the conversation is laughable. And anybody who's like, if you're listening to this and you might agree with, oh, well, we just want to stop the killing. Look, everybody wants to stop the killing. Nobody more than the Ukrainians. But selling off half of their, or literally 20% of their sovereign nation, just giving it to the terrorists who invaded them. Can you imagine that? Let's just step back for a moment and imagine that the United States was invaded and an occupying force. Let's say it was Russia and they took Alaska and part of Canada and they took 20% of our real estate. And then a leader from Eastern Europe, from Poland, let's say, said, you know what, I'm going to talk to Putin and we're going to give him that land. And then, you know what, the United States, you're going to give us $500 billion worth of your mineral rights. How does that sound? This is exactly what we're talking about. So let's keep it all in perspective.
No, if you go back to when Trump was impeached the first time, he was trying to extort Zelensky. Wasn't Zelensky then. It was whoever was before.
Right. So
yeah.
Zelensky is a democratically elected leader.
Right.
And although you will hear from other camps that he only has 4% approval, right? That's not true. BS. He's got 57% approval.
Right.
And the approval rating is based on a question, do you trust President Zelensky? 57% of the body politic in Ukraine say yes.
Yes.
Why isn't there an election? Because it's martial law, and that is also in their constitution. But let me tell you what martial law is. So we were invaded. Ukraine was invaded. When this happened, 20% of the territory is occupied now. So can those people vote in a free election? There are 1 million internally displaced people who are no longer in their home, probably in the Donbass or down in Kherson or Kharkiv region. They are displaced internally. There's another, we're not even sure of the exact number, 2 to 4 million Ukrainians who are refugees abroad.
Right. So how do they vote?
There are also 1 million men and women fighting in the trenches against the terrorist occupiers. Right. How do you hold an election? Anybody want to, how is that going to be fair?
No, because like when the United States held elections during war, we weren't occupied as a country.
No, we weren't.
So there was
any European country I think the only one that unashamedly didn't, no European country held elections during occupation or when they were involved in a brutal war. This is not some kind of a dictatorship. This is a democratically elected individual who the people love. He's in power. There will be elections.
He's one of the few leaders I can think of in our world today who rose to the moment beyond almost human capabilities. And it's been, every time I looked at our own leadership, I always thought we don't have people rising to the moment like that. And it's been wonderful to watch from abroad to see him.
There's a rawness to the sovereign state of Ukraine. They're a very young nation.
Right.
So only since the collapse of the Soviet Empire has there been a sovereign Ukraine. And this is a recognized nation on the global stage. And I want people to look into things like the Budapest Memorandum, where Ukraine said, we'll give away our nuclear weapons. We just protect us. We don't want to be a nuclear power. Right. They surrendered. They had the third largest nuclear arsenal on the planet. And they gave it away with the assurance that Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom would help them if they were invaded or if there was a crisis such as happening right now. Budapest Memorandum, check it out.
Yeah.
They're new, so they know what it's like to live without freedom. They know what it's like to live
So it's
under
very
an
important for them.
Under an oppressive regime. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And they also know the value of that they have to stand up and they have to resist, which is what's happening now. I pray that this does not happen in the United States because we do not have the resolve. Freedom to us has become something that our ancestors fought for, and it's just a given.
Yeah.
And although we respect our armed forces and we respect we respect their sacrifice greatly. I'm humbled by anybody who has served, whether you're in the Coast Guard or a firefighter or a nurse and a kindergarten teacher at a public school. I am humbled by your service. But I don't know that we have the fortitude because to us, freedom is something that is the norm.
Yeah.
Oppression is something that's not going to happen to us. This is Fortress America.
Yeah. As we
Is
are.
that too dark? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get dark. I'm just, anyway.
No,
maybe it's the jet lag.
I think about, it's not just that Ukraine understands that it must be free, it wants to be free. It seems like the people there also understand that when you're invaded, the invader doesn't stop with you if they succeed. And that's something that I don't think Americans have really understood or sought to get, is that, Russia likes to go to other countries and invade.
I challenge anybody, and you can harass me on Facebook at Rocky Durham. You can harass me on Facebook at Durham Humanitarian, the name of our organization, the 501c3 that we run. I would like anyone to name a single treaty that Russia has signed that they have not broken. A single one. Name one.
Wow.
Because there isn't. A treaty that they had with, not just Budapest Memorandum, look at the treaties they've had with Georgia or Southern Ossetia or Chechnya or Kazakhstan, and look at anything with the Baltic states.
Do you think that the goal is to regrow the Soviet Union and even the old Russian Empire?
Well, absolutely. And it really, the Russian people are victims of this as well, but they're also complicit. But the Russian people are victims of this because their promise that they remember this great Soviet empire that covered 1/5 of the world's landmass.
Yeah.
And then overnight disappeared. And now they're a joke on the global stage. And how do we reclaim that? And then a powerful leader comes in and says to them, a charismatic leader, I should say, and says, it is great to be Russian. We are a proud people. We are going to reclaim what is ours. This is our sovereign territory. No, it is not. But this is the what they're spouting, and the people drink it.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want to feel empowered? Who doesn't want to feel that there's a brighter horizon? But if it's through the oppression of other people and the annexation of sovereign territory and the brutal murder of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, the abduction of tens of thousands of children, this is not someone you negotiate with.
Make Russia great again. That was the thing. I've been reading about the negotiations, and it basically said if Putin had written our offer in terms of what the United States is saying it would do, he couldn't have gotten more of what he wanted.
There's no punishment.
Yeah. And there's no acknowledgement that there was an invasion. That's the part that, and really the discussion is how much of Ukraine will they give to Russia?
Well, that's the thing, because the conversation that we hear over here does not involve Ukraine, and Ukraine is not. They have spent the blood of their daughters and sons to maintain their sovereignty.
Yeah.
And they are not just going to hand it over unless the conversation has to start with Ukraine.
Exactly.
This isn't a member of a secondary member of a conversation that you bring in after you've already established framework. This is the conversation, Ukraine. And Zelensky can't say no. And the European partners are stepping up. I really appreciate what Macron has said, that they will be the guarantors of security in the peace agreement. But the peace agreement is not going to be give Russia what they want and then let's figure out how.
No, you don't reward the bully.
U.S. is going to get paid. No, what we're going to do is take back every inch of the Donbass, reclaim the Crimean Peninsula.
I was just going to say Crimea, they keep saying might go, but, that's...
But the thing is, that is sovereign territory. If people say that, oh, no, but there's Russian-speaking Ukrainians everywhere.
Right.
The language doesn't define their political beliefs.
Yeah.
There is no purge of Russian-speaking Ukrainians in Ukraine. In the West, people are more Ukrainian language proud only because they grew up speaking Ukrainian. In the East, people grew up speaking Russian. They're more comfortable with the language. Here in New Mexico, I can speak Spanish, but it's not my first language.
Right.
If I could only speak Spanish, it would be a challenge. And I would, like, if no one was around, I'd revert to English speaking. It's the same over there.
Right. You speak what you're comfortable with.
And it has nothing to do. This isn't a coup by Ukraine to maintain their sovereignty. This is a land grab by a terrorist occupying force who came in to take over, and it's a genocidal endeavor. The language, the symbolism, the traditional dress, the history, the names of Ukrainian authors, poets, musicians, military figures are being erased by Russia. This is genocide. Let's call it that.
Man, and I think we don't really understand that here. I mean, it's just, it was in the beginning, people paid a lot of attention, and then over the years, we quit. How can we help change our policy?
Well, here's the thing. We just really need to look for truth. And I know it's very hard, and this is a big ask for people. But we like to consume, and I'm a victim of this, and I'll speak from the first person. I like to consume news that I agree with. Mm-hmm. It's wrong. I like to hear a voice that has great reach, that echoes my feelings and emotions. I like that.
Yes.
Other people like that too. Other people with opposing viewpoints like this. What we have to do, and it's challenging, and it's upsetting, and it's uncomfortable, is we have to listen to things that we think are different from our viewpoints. We cannot listen to the news. We cannot absorb information just to affirm our position. We have to take in information to inform our position. And it's tricky, but do that for me, people. This isn't just about Ukraine. This is about everything. Don't just take it from my trusted news source that I'm comfortable with, and I hear his voice every 6 p.m. on the same channel, and I feel comfortable in the understanding that I'm not being lied to. Convenience and comfort is a debt we all must pay. We've been lulled to sleep, and we have to get uncomfortable. Get a little uncomfortable in the name of the truth. Understand what the other side is saying. Understand what your side is saying. Distill the truth from your own facts. But you need to be uncomfortable. You need to put yourself in a situation that is different.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll take a quick break and be back with more Conversations Different.
This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Looking to reach a wider audience and grow your business? For 175 years, the Santa Fe New Mexican has been the trusted voice of Santa Fe, with unmatched local reach in print and online. In addition to our long-standing, independent, family-owned newspaper, we have a full-fledged marketing team with the expertise to help you succeed in the 21st century. From traditional print to precision-targeted digital advertising, we have the tools to connect you with your ideal customers. Partner with us and see the results for yourself. Advertise with the Santa Fe New Mexican and unlock your business's full potential. Visit us at santafenewmexican.com/advertising or call us at 505-995-3852. Thank you.
We're back with Conversations Different, talking to Rocky Durham about his work in Ukraine and his quick visit back to the States. So you walked around town. Had you seen the obelisk out of the box, or had you seen it down? I'm just curious as a Santa Fe native.
That all happened. We saw that it was
gone.
Understanding this, and I'm a little bit in two minds about that. Being a native Santa Fean, I was born on Palace Avenue.
Okay.
And I understand that we don't want to glorify certain objects, and we don't want to celebrate dark periods in our existence. And I get it. I mean, absolutely.
Right.
However, I would like to open a conversation, and once again, harass me on social media, Rocky Durham on Facebook or Chef Rocky Durham on Instagram, Durham Humanitarian, where you can check out what we've been doing in Ukraine. Harass me on this. But there's something about denying our dark history that I'm against. And this is my own personal belief, I think it is important, although uncomfortable, and although maybe it's not right, because in the past we weren't right all the time.
Right.
And to whitewash the history to make people comfortable, I think is a disservice to the journey that we are on and that we continue. We come from bloody and roots that are not so honorable, so noble.
Yeah.
We must recognize that to go forward. We must recognize our dark past in order to move forward. We don't have to repeat it.
Right, and you don't necessarily have to keep it on display in the middle of the plaza either. That's, I think, of the other side.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I absolutely.
But you got to explore
not arguing
it.
that.
No, totally.
But to erase it, and this is a question. I'm not saying that this is what we should do. I'm asking a question: is it better to erase these dark memories, or is it better to remember them, have maybe instead of removing it, putting a block around it that we can see through with something saying this is a reminder of the past, that where we are today is on the blood of innocence and, on territory stolen from a sovereign nation and with deals that we made. We must recognize that we are not just as good as we would like to be.
Right.
But that's where the ambition to be better comes from.
No, that's true. And
Let's transcend it. Let's get better.
Yeah, it's true. And one of the hard things about the obelisk is that for people whose ancestors fought against the Texans and the South and save the
Sure.
Union, help save the Union, that's a bright moment.
Right.
They're not necessarily looking ahead to Sand Creek and the massacres and the Indian Wars that are the dark part of it. And it's everything's complicated.
And this is absolutely tied into this conversation. So let me attempt to draw that thread back into this, that we as a race, and I mean the human race.
Yes.
We as a species, let's call it that. We as a species are flawed. And our natural instinct is brutal. And given our advancements, we have the opportunity to question. And we have the opportunity to pause and say, wait a second, let's consider the options. Let's consider other viewpoints. Let's consider where the most truth lies. We have these opportunities, and we are not taking them. Yeah. We are accepting truth that is spoon-fed or
that is not true
right into our vine. Whether it's true or not, it's someone. And I believe that truth can have multiple facets, and that we really need to do better in exploring what is truth. So there is this situation in Ukraine where territory was stolen and occupied by an aggressive force, where people are being murdered, where children are being kidnapped. And this continues every day. This isn't just every once in a while there's a missile attack. Every night we're under attack. And we'll get something like 180 drones and ballistic missiles fired from Russia into civilian populations in Ukraine.
Yeah.
But why don't you listeners out there right now try and look for the truth yourself. Don't just take it from me. I'm one person expressing my viewpoint. I have been there. I've seen it firsthand for 3 years. So I'm telling you what I know. I'm not spinning this for any political purpose. I'm not endorsing a candidate. I'm trying to help people who are under attack. And that's what we do. And it's what we've been doing for 3 years. People, animals, refugees, medics, first responders, whoever we can.
One of the nicest stories I read at the beginning of the war was some town in Ukraine where they had dog food dispensers in the middle of town because so many dogs lost their humans and were wandering, but they didn't want them all to starve to death.
I haven't heard of that, but the Ukrainians love their animals.
Right.
And you will see every day we see photos or stories or TikTok videos.
Yep.
This isn't a third world nation we're talking about. This is an advanced scan your QR code to buy ammunition for the Ukrainian armed forces. I mean, this is not a 19th century Soviet village. Not that there was Soviets in the 19th century. Anyway, they love their animals.
Yes, it was obvious.
They love them. You will see soldiers who have found kittens on the front line, and they will take them into the trenches, nurse them back to health, and evacuate them. And that's actually something that we participate in, is like just linking the chain of transportation, getting animals from the Donbass into the West, and we've participated in evacuating animals into Poland. We've also done that for individuals, for people in formerly occupied villages, getting them out. They can no longer live there because their farm is mined now, and they can't make a living. They don't want to leave, but they have to.
Right.
And it's not because Zelensky and they spoke Russian and they were being bombed. It's because Russia invaded and started killing their neighbors.
And the whole reason they're calling in the peace talks, alleged peace talks, for an election is because Putin wants a pro-Soviet person in charge of Ukraine.
Right.
And that way they can then give up the country and he can get what he wants.
Right. This cannot happen until the war is over, because martial law, there's the displaced people, the people fighting, the refugees.
There's no way to get an accurate vote.
Not everybody could even vote. And who's to say that? 20% of the country is occupied by Russia.
Right.
How are you going to get a fair election out of there?
And in their constitution, you said there's a place to impose martial law. So this is an extra legal, like it would be maybe in other countries.
Right. I'm not sure what the U.S. Constitution says, but under martial law, you can't have, in Ukraine, you can't have an election. And it's not because of fascism. It's because how do you have an election in a police state? And the police state is not because of fascism. It's because they're looking after, and I don't know if people will be able to understand this, but they need to close everything down for the security of the nation. So martial law looks a lot like curfews. It looks a lot like checkpoints, and these happen, but it's because they're being invaded and they have to take care of themselves. They are invaded.
Yeah.
And so if you have to go through a block post, a checkpoint, or you have to carry your identification with you, or you have to be inside between midnight and 5 a.m. And I think my mom would agree that nothing good happens between midnight and 5 a.m. anyhow, so you should probably be at home.
That's right. During World War II, we couldn't drive to Los Alamos.
Right.
There's things that happen during wartime that aren't usual for...
It's not, there's no conspiracy on the part of Ukraine. I'd like to wrap it up with this.
Okay.
There's no conspiracy on the part of Ukraine. This isn't some way that they're trying to do something by having Russia invade them. If you step back a little bit from it and just see that on February the 24th, 2022, after a massive troop buildup, the Russian Federation invaded Ukraine in what they were calling a special military operation. They admit to this. They thought they were going to capture Kyiv and take over the whole country in 3 days. It's been 3 years now, and the Ukrainians have wiped out their entire Black Sea Navy, the entire fleet of Russian ships in the Black Sea, and this is a country who doesn't have a navy, who did that. They've stood up to them. They were occupied. They've pushed back. There's kind of a stalemate going on right now because their hands are tied by European, American, and NATO members to not be able to attack Russia. They can only defend themselves. While Russia builds up troops on the borders and inside the occupied territory, Ukraine can only fight at the front line.
Wow.
And so how are they supposed to reclaim this territory? Their hands are tied. But 3 years later, not 3 days, they are still in the fight.
How do you see an end to this?
Russia has to be, here's the simple answer, and we're going to go right to the quick. Russia has to be systematically dismantled. They are a terrorist state. They are not some country that's afraid of NATO. They are globalist, expansionist occupiers. They need to be turned into 34, is a number that I came up with randomly, 34 independent states, and let them just figure it out themselves. They cannot be on the world stage. They do not deserve a voice. They are chair, I don't know if they still are chair of the UN Security Council, Russia is. How is this even possible? But they need to be taken out of the conversation entirely. They don't need to be catered to. They don't need to be given lip service. They don't need to be taken to Saudi Arabia for champagne and caviar. They need to be silenced.
And on that note, this has been another Conversations Different. We'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to Conversations Different, hosted by me, Inez Russell Gomez, editorial page editor for the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our weekly episodes would not be possible without your support. We hope you enjoy them and keep listening. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Consider signing up for our newsletter so you never miss an episode, and while you're at it, consider subscribing to the Santa Fe New Mexican. Our podcast is available by visiting our website, santafenewmexican.com/podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Conversations Different with Inez Russell Gomez is produced by Matt Dalside and Ernesto Cisneros, published by the Santa Fe New Mexican, a local and independent newspaper owned by Robin Martin.